Welcome to episode 75 of VYPE Locker Talk Live. I'm your host, Whack. Joined alongside with me today are Matt and Jackson. Before we talk about what happened this past weekend in Texas high school football, let's talk to our guys real quick. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
Oh, can't complain at all. I think it was a good week for all of us. Texas won, LSU won, A&M won. Hey, even my Cowboys won. I was impressed with that. I think the D in Dallas stands for defense because defenses look good the last 2 weeks, even with that loss. Jackson, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Had a great week. Obviously, great weekend with A&M pulling out the win against 13 ranked Miami. They've got Arkansas this week, so excited for that. Excited for high school football this week.
Yeah, Arkansas struggled a little bit this week against what was it? What was who they what was the team they played?
Missouri
Missouri
State.
State.
Missouri State. That's right. Yeah, a little struggle there, and maybe I don't know if A&M has necessarily found the QB answer yet, but from all accounts, is a little bit better than what they've seen in the weeks past. But let's talk about some high school football, specifically Texas high school football. Weeks have come and gone. Houston a little. I wouldn't say. I want to choose the words. It wasn't a down week. It was a down week because a lot of teams took their bye week this past week. I think in our 6A rankings, for instance, they're going to come out, if I remember correctly. There's like somewhere around 12 or 13 teams that had their bye weeks last week in that rankings alone for 6A. So a lot of teams had their down weeks, but let's talk about some of the games that did happen. There were some good games. I think Matt, you were at the Woodlands New Caney game, which was a good game. Let's start there. If I remember hearing you this morning correctly, this is the first time New Caney's ever beat Woodlands. Did I hear you correctly there this morning, Matt?
Yeah, Jackson and I were both at that game. Little 360 coverage. New Caney has just moved up to 6A, and they haven't played each other. But man, it was just really odd to see New Caney, which has a beautiful stadium. Even the people in the Woodlands are like, "Man, this place is awesome." They got great music. They've got great announcers, and I tell you, New Caney just kind of hung around. You know those games when the underdog just kind of hangs around. And I tell you what, in the last 4 minutes of that ball game, it looked like the coaching at New Caney just kind of pulled a fast one on the Woodlands, and they get a great win. Coach of New Caney, man, when I got to interview him after the game, kind of got choked up, just like, hey, this is a program-changing win. And now, those kids really can kind of believe in what they're preaching every day.
Yeah, there was some kind of craziness all across kind of the state. I got two stories I want to throw y'all's way this from this past week. So first, we're going to go to Wimberley, and Wimberley and Fredericksburg both show up on Friday to play their game, and the refs, they're just not there. Where are the refs? They are not there. Lo and behold, the refs, I don't know what happened. They got the wires crossed. The refs thought the game was on Saturday. They were going to try and play with some kind of just volunteers, if you will. But they knew if they wanted it to count as an official game, they needed tassel refs. So they eventually called the game, postponed it to the next day, played the next day, and Wimberley comes out, I believe it was with a 3-point victory, 17-14. This is crazy story number one. Crazy story number two happened in Wichita Falls, where Roby, they were leading Wichita Christian with about 8 minutes left, 74-60, and their quarterback got ejected. And so Roby just walks off the field. Their whole team just walks off the field. I'm not sure what exactly has happened yet. Roby put the game as a W on Max Preps, and it's still there as of today. But 8 minutes left, and they just basically said, we're done. You ejected our quarterback. Don't know why he was ejected, but crazy story number two. And you just kind of love these crazy things that happen in Texas high school football. Jackson, I haven't come to you yet. Talk to us about some of these games. I mean, one in y'all's area again, that Ridgepoint game on Saturday seemed very crazy. Ridgepoint comes back and wins that one. But just talk to me about some of these games. I know you were paying attention to that South Oak Cliff Parish game as well. Oh, Jackson, I think you are on mute. Go ahead and check yourself there. Can't hear you yet. We'll go ahead and see if you can plug in your plug in your ear pods maybe and see if that works. Um, you know, oh, here we go. He's plugging them in, folks. This is what I love about live TV, especially when we're not all in studio together, is the magic of making every sure. Go ahead and try now, Jackson. Still can't hear you, man. Maybe go ahead and log out. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. So let me think of a game. I went to the Vandegrift. I'll go ahead and talk while he's doing that. I went to the
Yeah.
Vandegrift Stony Point game. Of course, Merle Bertrand, our broadcast director, is the voice of the Vipers there, and that one was a close game at first. The Stony Point quarterback went down. It was either late first or early second quarter, and that game kind of shifted. And Vandegrift, I mean, you talk about, hey, yeah, Stony Point lost their starting quarterback and all that, but man, their offense looked pretty good after that week one loss to Dripping Springs. They are coming alive, and they're going to be a team to watch because they will probably go to Division Two, which will be good for them. Avoiding Westlake and Lake Travis this year. So watch out for Vandegrift in the Austin area. I will say though, it is one of our plays of the week nominees for fan poll, but it is easily my play of the week if I was picking. And the first drive for Stony Point, 4th and 1, 4th and inches really from I think around midfield, and they go for it. And their TCU commit starter running back Cameron Cook, he goes behind center, just try to sneak it and get the first down, and he looks like he's dead to rights. And all of a sudden, you just see him burst through that kind of just pile of Vipers, and he goes the rest of the way for a touchdown. It was honestly a beautiful play. If you haven't seen it yet, go check out the plays of the week. It was just a phenomenal play. Jackson, do we have you back now?
Yes, you do.
There we go.
Yeah, so we were talking about South Oak Cliff and Parrish. That was a very exciting game. Parrish actually had the game going into the fourth quarter, 28-14. South Oak Cliff was able to come back and win on a game-winning field goal. Even though South Oak Cliff won, I think this is still way more impressive of a loss for Parrish, as they'd already beaten LBJ, who was in the state championship game last year. They beat Alito to open up the season, who's been a predominantly blue blood Texas high school football program. And then they came down to beat Episcopal here in Houston. This non-district run that they've gone on, and the fact that they almost took down the 5A state champs South Oak Cliff, I think that game's very impressive. I think it's something to really open the eyes that private schools have a little bit more than you think they do. And I really loved catching up with that game, following it on Twitter. In other news, we mentioned Ridgepoint Hightower. Ridgepoint was down, I believe, by 2 or 3 scores and went on a 25-0 run in the second half, starting off with a Mason Dossett 100-yard kick return touchdown. So big win for Ridgepoint, as they kind of started out the gates slow, but they're starting to pick up some momentum here going into district play. So those were 2 games that really struck me. And also the Woodlands New Caney game. It was a low-scoring game. Woodlands is up 7-0 going into that fourth quarter, but they just couldn't get the ball rolling offensively, and they let New Caney stay in that game, and New Caney wanted it more. And I think for that New Caney community, that means a lot. And don't be shocked if you see New Caney potentially take this district now, as they can I believe that they'll be able to kind of roll over some of their opponents in this district.
Yeah, let's talk about where things kind of stand, and I know probably mainly in regards to Houston, because I know that's kind of the area you'll cover. But we're heading in a district now. Most teams, if they're not starting this week, they're starting the week after, the next couple of weeks. Where do things stand in kind of the thought process of Texas high school football? I know you guys are Houston, so that's fine. If you want to stick there, but are things kind of playing out the way you expected? I don't know if anyone expected North Shore to dominate as good as they have. I think people thought North Shore was going to be good. I don't know if people thought North Shore was going to be this good. How are things playing out? Are they kind of going according to plan, Matt, for the most part?
Yeah, I would say North Shore, when you 3 out of the 4 years you win it, they get a couple of really nice transfers. One, the big defensive tackle from Spring comes over. An Eisenhower receiver, it's an embarrassment of riches of receivers over there. They hadn't really used him too much. But, when you win like that and you have a culture of winning, then you're just going to continue to reload. And they're the best in the business at it right now. It used to be Katy. And look, Katy's great, but here's the trick. The reason John Kay loves North Shore and Galena Park ISD, he's the only game in town. So he doesn't have to share talent with a Pato, May Creek, Morton Ranch, Cinco Ranch, Seven Lakes, Tompkins. I mean, you have so many schools in that district. So just imagine if you had Katy and you had, let's just say, four of those schools all went together and play, kind of were combined. They would be a power program. So that's what kind of hurts Katy a little bit. Do not sleep on Cinco Ranch. I've been sleeping on them. I'm like, man, Cinco's been down for so long. Don Clayton was kind of the last coach that had him going over there, but they smashed Tompkins, which was a bit of a surprise and put West Houston on notice because, yes, it's Katy, but Cinco Ranch is sleepy good. Pato, no, they ain't winning this. They're not trying to supplant anybody over there. It is going kind of how we figured. Cinco Ranch is kind of that fly in the ointment because nobody really knows how good they are, but they're just beating people. They have a really good quarterback, which is kind of exciting to see. But it looks like it's going to set up, for your Westlake North Shore semi, which is going to be a heck of a game. And then, your D2 schools, which it's a little bit of a shakeup. Katy could potentially go D2, which would be great for them. So we'll just kind of see how it plays out there. But, Atascocita is going to be good, but I just don't know that they have enough to make that long, long run. 5A, wide open. I don't see anybody that we can really get around to say these could be the state champs in Texas. I think we get to the Final Four over there from Houston, but I just don't see any big 5A superpowers going to make a move.
Yeah, it's really looking like, you're probably going to see, like the Liberty Hill in that state semi that will probably face the Houston squad. And maybe Hayes. Hayes, they were 6A last year, moved down to 5A, I think in large part thanks to, a kind of a sister school in Buda Johnson opening up, taking away some of that enrollment numbers. And they've looked pretty good so far. We'll really see. I think their district starts, if it hasn't started this week, it starts next week. And they've looked pretty dominant in most of their games. I think for me, when we look at, I'm going to stick in the Austin San Antonio area real quick. I think this is going to be the year where you say is San Antonio question mark. Is this finally going to be the year where you finally maybe see them back in the state tourney, especially when you think of 5A, 6A, especially 6A. They haven't really been, I think 2012, and it was still the last time that happened where they haven't won it, but they got there, right? And still might be the team this year. They played a really good Midland Legacy team, had to travel, that 7+ hours to get there, and they won that game in a very close contest against a really good Midland Legacy squad. And they beat Lake Travis, now granted without Bo Edmondson, but they beat Lake Travis, so they have that kind of energy about them. They probably will see them or Westlake at some point in the playoffs, you would assume. I don't know if they'll get past Westlake, but this could be the year where maybe you see them beat, if they have to face Lake Travis, where hey, you're going to see them maybe finally beat Lake Travis, right, in the playoffs. It's kind of been one of the bugaboos. And then really, I think if there's a team in San Antonio right now that I'm going to have my eye on, it's kind of San Antonio-ish, right? Bernie. You look at the Bernie Greyhounds looking absolutely amazing right now in San Antonio. And at the 4A level, I think they have a really good shot to go all the way this year. Jackson, what about you? What are your thoughts on all of this? When I posed the question of, where Texas high school football is everything kind of where you imagined it? I know there's some teams with losing records you might not think of. We think of South Oak Cliff, for instance, but again, I think they're figuring stuff out. That's okay for me. They're playing some pretty tough non-district opponents. Are things kind of playing out how you expected them, Jackson?
Yeah, I think they're playing out how you expect. I think South Oak Cliff, for me, is kind of the biggest what if right now, you win state last year. Obviously, we all had talked about the quarterback situation would be kind of the main concern. Also, they're playing without their main wide receiver, I believe Jamari Colley, and he hasn't played at all yet this season, I don't believe. So I expect them to get back on track. But in regards to the rest of the state, I believe things are going the way that we had expected them to go, with the top teams dominating in their districts. I think the real key for me this year is going to see, can DeSoto get over that hump and beat Duncanville this year? I think they've with transfer running back Trey Wisner, and then you've got Jonte Cook on the outside, another Texas commit, and their junior quarterback. I would love to see this DeSoto team take that step this year and beat Duncanville and potentially be the team that meets North Shore in the state championship if things pan out how we expect it to.
Real quick too is a team that you want to have your eye on, and they've played 2 district games already because they're in a big district. Is Highland Park, of course, as we know, Highland Park is in 6A this year, and for 2 district games, I mean 52-21, 63-0. I think they're in a favorable district. I will say that when you look at their the district they're in, that's going to help them get into the playoffs. But hey, so far so good when it comes to year one at the 6A level for Highland Park. Matt, we've talked about how things have stand. Are there any teams that maybe I wouldn't say disappointing have had disappointing starts, but maybe surprising where compared to where you thought you'd be? We think of I mentioned Jackson South Oak Cliff, but for me that's not as surprising just because we knew they had a new quarterback coming in. We knew they were facing a tough district or tough non-district schedule. Are there any teams that you can think of where you look at their record and you'd be like, I thought they were going to be better at this point of the season?
Yeah, there's 2 in particular in Greater Houston, and that's Pato number 1. They're so loaded with talent, and they had a lot of things happen. They get a new coach, and that kind of can really mess up the continuity of a program. But I thought they're not. I think they're going to be fine, and they're going to be okay in the playoffs. But I was expecting them to just be blowing people out of the water. I know they're really good on defense. They're not that great on offense, but maybe they'll get that together. That was one team. But, I mean, the team in Houston that is really the biggest surprise has got to be the Woodlands. I mean, they have a 4-star quarterback and a gigantic offensive line. Their defense is good. The defense held them in the game against New Caney, but to lose to New Caney, and there were some errors, like at the end of the game, North Shore could have gotten the ball back and scored or kicked a field goal or something, and they just mess up and don't field the kickoff. And New Caney recovers. It's a ball game. It's just little things, man. It's little things. I think they're in a situation where they think they should win, and you got to play the games. They killed Oak Ridge. They got killed by North Shore. They lose to New Caney. They could possibly lose and not win that district title, which they're easily favored to do so. They're underperforming.
Yeah, especially with now Jackson. I haven't really looked into this, but isn't DJ Lagway, isn't he like not play? Is he injured? I know he was it last week's game. He played half the game or something. What's going on there?
Yeah, so I mean, after watching how Lagway and Willis started the season, I actually kind of moved Willis up on my rankings in that kind of district. I expected them to be a playoff contender, and I still think they are. But when Lagway went down, he went down against Temple and got a high ankle sprain, and also one of their starting tailbacks, Terry Lawrence, tore his ACL in that same game. You have 2 of those guys go down, and it's the next guy step up. I know they had a pretty good game against Conroe last week, and I believe they beat Conroe 28-24, which was big time, but that was without Lagway. So I think the rest of the season, Hudden Hogermeyer, the backup quarterback, has played really well. I really liked what I saw from him in that game against New Caney when he came into the second half, though they were down big. They lost last week 28-24, but I expect Lagway to bounce back from this injury and give them some spark. I still think they are a contender, but starting 0-2 in district, and they still have to play a lot of tough teams in the district. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Willis bounces back from this one.
I think you have to like what you're seeing, though, real quick before I give it to you, Matt. See, you want to say something? I mean, losing your starting quarterback like that and still putting up a tough, tough game against Conroe. Got to be impressive under a first-year head coach there. Matt, what you got to say?
Well, I mean, those are the teams that I'm kind of surprised at that are doing so not poorly, but they're just not doing that great. Man, there's a couple teams that have some big games this weekend that I'm kind of getting fired up about, and that's Stratford. Stratford, Nash Rankin is the quarterback. His dad, Todd Rankin, is the coach. Todd Rankin has come over from North Shore. He's got that North Shore lineage, and they're playing very well and have done so last year and this year. They got a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. They have a huge game against Cy-Fair this weekend. Cy-Fair won state a couple years back. They're just kind of one of these traditional blue blood programs that are really, really good. And a couple other teams that I know, CE King is a team. Everybody, I think they went up to Allen, or I can't remember who they played, and they got kind of crushed. But I think CE King is physical and fast enough to make some noise in the playoffs. They're in the same district as Atascocita and North Shore, and if they go small, I think they're going to do pretty well in that Region 3 small school. I really like what they're doing. I know I mentioned Cinco Ranch earlier. I think they're doing a tremendous job. And another kind of team off the grid is Magnolia West. Magnolia West gets zero love, zero. And they're going to get in a battle with Foster coming up, which will be really cool to see. Both teams are undefeated. They're number 1 and number 2 in our rankings in 5A. That's a really cool story. Country school that is really performing well, and Foster's a team that's also performing well. They have been a little bit down in the past couple of years with enrollment and kind of the changing of the boundaries over there in Lamar Consolidated ISD. But Sean McDowell has got it going, and man, they're having a lot of fun over there on the west side of town. So those are some teams I'm kind of trending with right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll talk about this game on Thursday, but I know the game to watch this week, if not in Austin, San Antonio, maybe in the entire state, of course, Lake Travis and Westlake. Usually they play that game the last game of the season, but with their new district, shuffle some things around. So Westlake and Lake Travis playing. Probably Bo.
What's your call on that, Dub?
I mean, you have to go with Westlake. You haven't seen Bo Edmondson play this year. I don't know. Well, I don't know if he played last week or not. So you see how they've played. For me, if you watch Westlake play, you might look at their first half of some of the games and be like, oh well, Ridge Point hung tough with them. Some of these other teams hung tough with them. But you'd play Westlake for a full 4 quarters. There may be only one team that can do that, and that's North Shore, in my opinion. So I think Westlake should win this game. Unless Bo Edmondson comes back and just plays out of his mind, right? So that's my pick right there. I mean, it's hard not to pick that, and we'll talk more in depth about that on Thursday. But got to go with Westlake right there. Before we get out of here today, I had a question, and let's see if I can remember it. I always need to write my questions down sometimes. You know what? No, we're good. We don't need to ask another question. That's it. That's it for today, guys. We did a good job today. We covered we talked about all the good games out there. We'll be back tomorrow with the St. Pius show with Coach Craig Cranfield and Josh Cook. And then, of course, on Thursday, we'll be back with our preview show, breaking down some of those games, talking more Lake Travis, Westlake, I'm sure. Before we get out of here, let's turn it over to Matt and Jackson for some shout-outs. Matt, who are you shouting out today?
Again, I've been beating this drum, the Cinco Ranch. I'm shouting them out. Also, this VYPE staff just grinding it out as we are pushing out tons of content, so stay tuned and look at that, from video to graphics to magazines, whatever. Kudos to our staff who are just killing the game right now.
Jackson, how about you, man? Who you shouting out today?
Yeah, I'm going to give 2 shout-outs today. First, I'm going to shout out my alma mater, Concordia Lutheran. They're 4-0 for the first time since 2018. Had an awesome touchdown pass from class of 2025 quarterback Loudon Seabury, who got his little inner Johnny Manziel, fumbled the snap at the beginning, bumped into his running back, rolled out, threw a dime to win the game with 20 seconds left. So shout out to Concordia and Coach Amendola. They're doing great things over there right now. And then I'm also going to shout out Devon A-Chain because without him, I would not be very happy this morning as A&M got the win against Miami. So those are my shout outs this week.
It's one of our plays of the week, by the way, the Concordia Lutheran game-winning touchdown. So haven't voted yet, go and vote for your pick for play of the week. That one, and there are plenty of good ones out there. Of course, so my pick's that Stony Point Cameron Cook touchdown. I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, just go watch it. It's amazing. I'm going to shout out the Davenport Wolves, San Antonio 4A school, first year under UIL play. They played the last 2 years, just kind of whoever they could play. And then first year as a 4A squad under UIL, currently 4-0 and looking good. I mean, that's a team to watch. I mean, that team. I'll talk about Bernie at 4A. I mean, Davenport's looking pretty good. They might be able to give Bernie a run for the money. Although I don't know if they're both D1 or both D2 or are different there, so I'm not too sure on that. But that being said, Davenport's going to get my shout out there as we head into week 5. It's going to do it for our show for today. Like I said, come on back tomorrow for our St. Pius show with Coach Craig Cranfield, and then Wednesday is our Coach's Corner. Thursday, we'll be back again with another episode of Luck Talk Live. And then close it out Fridays with VYPE Recruit Spotlight, all at 3 p.m. Till then, I'm Whack. That's Matt and Jackson, and we'll see you at the games.